You know, you sit down for a tech keynote, you expect, well, the usual stuff: product reveals, big visions for the future.
Mm-hmm. Standard fare.
But this morning, May 19th, 2025, over at Microsoft's Build conference in Seattle, something pretty different happened.
Yeah, Satya Nadella's big keynote speech got interrupted. A protest.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today. We've got a couple of key sources here.
Right. There's an article from The Verge that reported on the whole thing, the disruption itself.
And then there's this email that the employee involved sent out right after. It went to loads of colleagues.
So between those two, we get a pretty good sense of what went down and, the thinking behind it, this challenge to Microsoft about its contracts with the Israeli government.
Right. So our plan here is basically to walk you through what happened, why this employee protested, how Microsoft responded, all based strictly on what these sources tell us.
Yeah, we're just laying out the information from The Verge and the email, no personal takes on the politics, just focusing on understanding the situation as reported.
Okay, so let's start with the keynote itself.
Okay, so The Verge describes it, Satya Nadella's on stage, and pretty early on, this Free Palestine protest kicks off.
It wasn't just one person either, was it?
No, the report mentions multiple protesters. Security eventually escorted them out, but yeah, it was a noticeable disruption.
And The Verge identifies one of them, specifically Joe Lopez. He's actually a Microsoft employee.
Yeah, a firmware engineer on the Azure Hardware team. Been there 4 years, apparently.
And interestingly, The Verge also mentions another participant was someone formerly from Google, someone involved in protests there about their Israel cloud contract.
Right, which kind of suggests this isn't just a one-off Microsoft thing. It hints at maybe a wider pattern in the tech world.
Could be. But what Lopez did next is, well, pretty significant. He didn't just protest.
No, straight after, he sends this email. And like you said, not just to a few people. The Verge says thousands of Microsoft employees got it.
Which really gets the message out there, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And The Verge quotes quite a bit from it. He starts off saying he's just shocked by the silence from Microsoft's leadership about, the situation in Gaza.
You can sort of understand that sentiment, right?
Yeah.
Given the news, silence from your employer might feel odd or worse.
Especially when he brings up Microsoft's previous statement, the one where they said they looked into it and found no evidence their tech was causing harm there.
Ah, yes. And this is where he really takes issue, isn't it?
Big time. He says, and this is a direct quote from the email via The Verge, "Leadership rejects our claims that Azure technology is being used to target or harm civilians in Gaza. Those of us who have been paying attention know that this is a bold-faced lie."
Wow. Okay, bold-faced lie. That's
Yeah.
incredibly direct, especially coming from a current employee.
It really is. It's not just disagreeing, it's flat out calling the company's official position untrue.
And he elaborates on why he thinks that.
Yeah, he focuses on the data, the stuff stored in Microsoft's cloud, Azure. His worry, as The Verge explains it, is that data, maybe gathered through surveillance he considers illegal, is being
Used how?
used to justify actions that harm Palestinians. He's worried about the information held in the cloud potentially enabling harmful decisions on the ground.
When you think about Azure, the scale of data we're talking about is immense, right?
Exactly. It's vast amounts of information. Communications, sensor data, you name it. Lopez's point seems to be, if some of that data is tainted or gathered improperly and then AI analyzes it, well, the outcomes could be disastrous.
It raises that whole question about tech companies and their responsibility for how their tools are used, especially by governments in conflict zones.
Definitely. So how did Microsoft actually respond to these kinds of concerns before the protest even?
Well, the Verge article mentions that just the week before this Build protest, Microsoft had announced they'd done an internal review.
Right, and they brought in an external firm too, though it wasn't named.
Yeah, an assessment related to Gaza. And their main finding, according to the article,
They basically said their relationship with the Israeli Ministry of Defense, the IMOD, is just a standard commercial relationship, nothing unusual.
and the bottom line from their review, as The Verge reported it, was clear. They found no evidence that Microsoft's Azure and AI technologies have been used to harm people, or that the iMode broke any rules.
So a pretty firm denial from Microsoft's side.
Very firm.
Yeah.
But clearly, as the protest shows, that statement didn't exactly put the issue to rest for everyone inside the company.
Not at all. And it's important, like you touched on earlier, this build disruption wasn't the first incident. The Verge connects the dots.
That's right. A few weeks before, there was that Microsoft 50th anniversary event. That got interrupted too.
Yeah, by two people described as former employees. One apparently called Mustafa Suleiman, the AI chief, a war profiteer.
And demanded they stop using AI for, quote, genocide. Strong words again.
Very strong. And the second protester at that event apparently interrupted Bill Gates, Steve Ballmer, and Satya Nadella.
So interrupting the absolute top brass, it does suggest a pattern, a concerted effort.
Definitely seems organized. And these protests, The Verge links them to a specific group.
Yes, no Azure for Apartheid.
Okay, and who are they?
The article describes them as current and former Microsoft employees. Their main point is that by giving cloud and AI services to Israel, Microsoft is, in their words, supporting and enabling an apartheid state.
So a very fundamental objection to the contracts themselves.
And it seems their concerns go deeper than just general cloud hosting. The Verge says they're worried about reports, media reports, suggesting the Israeli military is using Azure and OpenAI tech more and more.
For what kinds of things?
Things like mass surveillance, using AI to transcribe calls, texts, audio, that kind of intensive data processing.
Which, yeah, you can see how that would raise serious ethical flags for people, especially those working on the tech.
The Verge article also brings in another voice, Hassam Nasr. He's identified as an organizer with No Azure for Apartheid.
And a former Microsoft employee himself, right? I think the article mentioned he was fired after holding a vigil for Palestinians.
Yes, that's what it says. So someone directly impacted. And what did he think of Microsoft's official statement, the one saying no evidence of harm?
He called it contradictory. That was his word.
Contradictory how?
Well, he pointed out what he saw as a tension, Microsoft saying, we found no harm, but also apparently admitting they don't have full visibility into exactly how the iMod uses the tech.
Ah, okay. So the argument is, how can you be sure there's no harm if you don't know everything it's being used for?
Precisely. That seems to be the crux of his criticism.
Makes sense why that would be a sticking point.
Yeah, Nasser suggested the whole statement felt more like a PR stunt, trying to smooth things over publicly rather than really digging into the employees' concerns about the iMod relationship.
Okay, so that's the broader context. Let's go back to Joe Lopez's email. The Verge shared quite a bit of it, giving us more insight into his personal motivation.
Right. It's quite revealing. He actually starts off pretty positive about Microsoft, talking about liking his colleagues, his initial experience there.
So he wasn't anti-Microsoft from the start.
Doesn't sound like it. He says his feelings changed as he watched events unfold in Gaza, describing his horror and shock at the silence from leaders.
It sounds like a real buildup of, moral distress.
Yeah, and feeling like he had to do something. He mentions trying small things first, sharing info, petitions.
But then learning about the No Azure for Apartheid group was a key moment.
It seems so. He specifically mentions seeing that earlier protest at the 50th anniversary event and how it hit him hard.
And he asked himself that question.
Yeah, a really powerful one. Microsoft is killing kids. Is my work killing kids? I mean, that shows you the depth of his internal struggle.
Absolutely. That's grappling with the direct impact of your job. And he mentions thinking Microsoft was like the more ethical tech company.
He did, which is why these allegations, he says, were such a shock and pushed him to look deeper.
And when Microsoft put out their official response, the review findings, that didn't satisfy him at all.
Not remotely. He calls the reviews non-transparent audits, partly because they were internal or by an unnamed external firm. That lack of openness was a big issue for him.
And he seized on that specific point about special access, didn't he? Microsoft admitting they gave the iMon access beyond standard commercial terms.
Yeah, he really zooms in on that, asking these pointed questions in the email. Do you really believe that the special access was allowed only once? What sort of special access do they really need, and what are they doing with it?
You can really hear the skepticism there.
Yeah.
The lack of trust.
Totally. And he follows that right up by restating his core belief that data on Azure is being used harmfully. He says, every byte of data can and will be used as justification to level cities and exterminate Palestinians.
That is just an incredibly strong conviction.
No ambiguity there at all.
And the email wasn't just his personal feelings, right? It was also a call to others.
Yes, very much a call to action for his colleagues. Sign petitions, join the movement, talk internally. He even acknowledges his own position of privilege that allowed him to protest so publicly.
Does he predict what might happen next?
He does. He suggests that if Microsoft doesn't change course, they're going to face more boycotts, more damage to their image. He sees this escalating.
And then he ends it quite personally, reflecting on his own past inaction.
Yeah, reflecting on maybe not speaking up sooner, but then quoting that saying, the best time to act was yesterday, the second best time is today. It gives you a real sense of his personal journey to that moment of protest.
Okay, so pulling it all together.
Hmm.
We had this disruption at a major Microsoft event by an employee protesting the company's ties to Israel.
Driven by deep concerns, detail in his email about how Microsoft's tech, specifically Azure, might be contributing to harm in Gaza, directly contradicting the company's own findings.
We saw Microsoft's official stance. They reviewed it, found no evidence of harm, called it a standard commercial relationship.
But that stance was met with criticism, labeled contradictory by activists within the No Azure for Apartheid group, who point to ongoing concerns and previous protests.
And just to be super clear for everyone listening, what we've done here is map out the situation based only on The Verge's reporting and the content of Joe Lopez's email.
Exactly. We've focused on presenting the different perspectives and the sequence of events as laid out in those sources without adding our own judgment on the wider political issues.
Right. We wanted to give you the information from these specific documents so you can think about it for yourself.
So maybe here's a final thought to leave you with. As technology gets more and more intertwined with, well, everything, including global conflicts,
Yeah.
what kind of role or maybe responsibility do the people making the tech have?
Yeah, when it comes to questioning how their work is used
Yeah.
and what happens for them, for the companies, when those questions spill out into public actions like this.